Forrest Wynne. He's an area specialist in Western Kentucky for Kentucky State University. He's going to be talking about a demonstration project on harvesting polyculture and food-sized channel catfish and mature paddlefish from ponds. Is it on there? It wasn't earlier.
Oh, really? I think.
Okay.
Good. That's good news. It'd be a little embarrassing if it wasn't. This is a story about a supposed short-term demonstration project that went on for about 10 years. So, in any event, the two species involved in this polyculture project were channel catfish, a standard species of our catfish industry, and obviously paddlefish. A little background about channel catfish in Kentucky. Our ponds are mostly 2-hectare ponds, typically stocking somewhere around 12,000 fish per hectare in a multiple batch production scenario, which means basically we're culling off the larger fish, selling them, and understocking with fingerlings on a replacement basis. This goes on around the year as long as we're harvesting and marketing fish, and this allows the industry to stock a supply of processing plants year-round. Typically, in our small-scale industry in Kentucky, we're looking at harvests of about 1,000, 5,000 kilograms at once. Typically, the catfish are 1 to 2 kilograms. And almost all the fish are sold to live haulers, although occasionally when processors get in tight supply for fish, we will sell fish to processors as well. Just some real quick estimates on harvest cost per kilogram on catfish. Not surprisingly, you can see the more fish you harvest, the rate of reduction in price. Basically, it takes about as much effort to harvest a little bit of fish as it does a lot of fish. No surprises there. On to paddlefish. These fish were originally stocked in 2002, 30 to 40 centimeter fish, eight 2-hectare ponds. You can see about 370 fingerlings per hectare. The fish were bought at about $1 a piece. I don't know if that was a good price or not, but that's what it was paid. And as already been stated, they filter feed on zooplankton and insect larvae. At the winter of 2011, about close to 2,000 kilograms of fish were harvested. And that was the final harvest. Now, the females average 11.5 kilograms, males slightly smaller, close to 9 kilograms. Paddlefish, and Renee will speak to this later on, sold for meat and caviar. Pond bank prices received for meat somewhere around $1, $1.10 per kilogram. Roe, considerably higher, $99 per kilogram. And the fish were sold mostly to local restaurants, these types of market outlets for fillet with skin on. And skin-on fillets were roughly about 30% dress out. You can see the meat prices here somewhere between $11, $13 per kilogram. The caviar, somewhat more expensive, around $700. Average yield was pretty close to a kilogram per fish for a roe. Benefits, we did a lot. This whole project was based on whether this is actually going to be a viable thing to do. To use catfish ponds as nursery habitat. Ran into a whole bunch of trouble with logistics, marketing, processing. The fish were supposed to stay in for a couple growing seasons. They wound up, the first batch stayed in for I think about 7 or 8. So we had a fish in the ponds for a long time, actually getting up to maturity. Two species obviously grown in the same pond. We couldn't find any indication that the presence of paddlefish really affected catfish production per se. Logistics and seining the fish, separating the species, often a problem in polyculture, was more of an issue, and we'll get into that later. The idea of this was that the paddlefish could be raised in these ponds without any feed. Catfish ponds are very fertile. They're stocked intensively, fed a lot of feed, and the paddlefish seem to do fairly well in them in terms of growth. Also, we're looking at hopefully an extra source of income for the growers, because sometimes catfish prices have gotten pretty low. What they didn't mention in 2003, when all those catfish were being produced, is that they're selling for about 58 cents a pound, something like that. So you got to look at the numbers. Anyway, most of these paddlefish grown to stock in lakes, various restocking efforts, and for ranching efforts, as has been previously discussed. Some things to consider before doing this: extra harvest time and labor. Typically, we run 5-man crews to harvest catfish ponds. It did slow things up. It wasn't a big deal until water temperatures got hot, up around 27 degrees C or a little greater. We started running the risk of losing both catfish and paddlefish just due to the delays. It's a hard time of year, the height of the summer, it's a hard time of year to harvest paddlefish, but yet this is one of our peak demands is during the hot part of the year when the water temperatures are warm. And this is what we're looking at. Estimates for 177 fish when we harvested were somewhere around $700 for the entire harvesting estimate, and also $500 to sex the fish. We had to divide the fish up into male and female populations, and they were harvested and treated differently. We think the labor cost somewhere around $1,900 over an 8-year period. Problems and issues. Biggest issue was really low paddlefish survival. It was interesting to hear some of the dynamics with predation by other fish on paddlefish. We tend to like to think that catfish are not real fish eaters, although in the multiple batch system, catfish are pretty good. Some segment of the population are good at avoiding the seine. We get some really big fish out there. It's conceivable that some of these guys are out there eating paddlefish. This we don't know. When you work in ponds of this size, there's a lot going on out there you don't know. Again, each seining effort took about 45 minutes to move the paddlefish over the seine, generally speaking, just to get them out of the way. The fish are docile. They're not real difficult, but it is time consuming. And obviously, the more there are, the longer it takes. Added labor cost, again, about $240 a year is the estimate from our farm labor stats. Problem is we require frequent seining of these ponds. Oftentimes during the summer, these ponds, during the growing season, these ponds will probably be seined every 2 or 3 weeks. So this is a real repetitive situation, which you're constantly having to haul fish out of the seine, move the paddlefish over the seine, so it does provide some logistic problems. We did have one incident where we felt like it delayed the seining enough. Situations were touchy enough in the pond to where it might have contributed to a fish kill of both catfish and paddlefish in the seine. Poor survival. Over 8 years, less than 5%. I'd estimate this around 2 to 3%. We've had some DO kills. Quite true to form, they do not like dissolved oxygen less than 2 parts per million, or even at 2 parts per million. In fact, in catfish ponds, they have the option of swimming into the aerators, which they do. And paddlefish have survived a lot over the millennia, but aerators prove to be a big challenge, and they go right into them. And this is not good and it makes a bad sound when you have big paddlefish hitting the aerator. So anyway, we didn't really notice any incidents of disease per se. We did have one incident in which all fish in the pond were just about expired, catfish and paddlefish, and then the background to that whole business was somewhat mysterious. Farmer swears up and down it wasn't dissolved oxygen. Of course, if you're around some farmers, they change the membrane on their meters about every 2 years, whether it needs it or not. So anyway, this happened on a weekend, and he didn't bother to call me until Monday, and when all the fish were buried. So we were left to wonder just what happened there. But anyway, disease, not such a big issue. Fish seem pretty hardy. Predation, this particular farm where this demonstration site was, we had lots of eagle and osprey activity. And I think around the dawn, dusk hour, some fish may have been picked off by them. But truthfully, we don't really know. Fish just weren't there. They declined fairly steadily over the years, and we never really saw much sign of mortality other than the low oxygen situations we got into. Could have been maybe not enough zooplankton early on, hard to say, but little observed mortality. So, after all this was done, we went and did it again. This time a little more controlled, 1,800 fish stocked into 4.2 hectare ponds, and this was in 2008. Same stocking size, about, I should say, 450 fish were stocked per pond. There was a sample seining of some fish in 2011. They came out to be about 3.1 kilograms, and in the spring we did the final harvest. 216 fish came out weighing roughly 800 kilograms with about a 3.84 kilogram average weight. Survival in this situation was down to 12%. This is after about 3.5 years. So you can see it's a fairly dramatic curve. Whatever's taking these fish, wherever they're going, they're not coming up in the net over long periods of time. Again, we don't really know low dissolved oxygen incidents. We don't really know just what was the cause of much of this mortality. Some of these fish, if anybody's ever transported paddlefish, this is somewhat of an unnerving sight, but this is what paddlefish look like in the live haul tank. But in any event, these are pretty high rates right here for 6-hour transport time. And this is not liquid oxygen, but I believe compressed oxygen gas on that truck. Is that right? Oxygen bottles. But in any event, survival is close to 100%, if not 100%. Recommendations still, I think, if there's any utility in using channel catfish production ponds for paddlefish, again, it's 1 or 2 seasons for nursery habitat. The fish grow pretty well, and you can get them out before they're too big to handle, and hopefully before you suffer a whole lot of mortality. It's going to be up to the producer to decide what's an acceptable level of mortality. If 50% survival is okay, then that's good. But you're obviously going to take some mortality in these situations. And again, we don't really have a good handle as to why that is. The idea is to get a fish big enough to stock and survive out in these reservoirs, large impoundments, where they can be grown out for caviar or to be used as meat. And that's pretty much where we are with it. We know that it doesn't look too good over the long term. And Renee Corner's in the back here. She'll be speaking later. And John Murdoch and Kentucky State are all participants in this project.